During the last Pride Month, this picture started circulating around of Regent Street in the UK, flying dozens of Progress Pride flags. The Progress Pride flag is the latest inclusive development for Pride. While that old bigoted Pride flag only represented lesbians, gays, and bisexuals, the black and brown chevrons represent Black Lives Matter, the pink and blue and white chevrons represent trans people, and the yellow triangle with the purple circle represents intersex people. It's always going to be funny to me that, as more and more shit is added to the Pride flag, the actual focus of the flag, non-straight people, is slowly eaten away. The point of the rainbow was that it covered all colors, all possibilities. The yellow and purple of intersex is already in the rainbow. The pink and blue of trans is already in the rainbow. But these people don't want that kind of coexistence. They want to pave over the old symbols with their own, and they're slowly doing so. In any case, progressives online said that this was a beautiful sight, but normal people looked at this with a bit of unease that they couldn't quite put their finger on. Some of them said that this felt like they were being conquered, but those people were immediately laughed out of the conversation. Conquered by who? This is in the UK, and it's Britbongers putting this stuff up and Britbongers celebrating it. Maybe you're just a bigot. Well, to explore what's going on here, we have to talk a bit about what flags are. And to do that, we actually have to forget about flags. You know what a ceremonial weapon is, right? Sometimes you'll see officers in an army walking around with a sword, even though it's not really a practical weapon in the modern age. Sometimes high-ranking officials will be given the dignity of retaining their sidearms in a situation where weapons aren't really allowed. This isn't a ceremonial weapon in that it's a real gun, but it still serves the same ceremonial purpose. The open display of a weapon denotes a higher social status, and that status encapsulates both legitimate authority and social trust. The idea is that the person who wields the ceremonial weapon could use it irresponsibly to hurt those around him, but he doesn't. And the people around him simultaneously defer to his authority and power, but trust him not to misuse it by not challenging his open display of the weapon. It is this open display of weaponry, while simultaneously choosing not to use it, that makes the wielder dignified. And it's not just soldiers who do this. Modern monarchs wield scepters. The powers of an office within a republic are often represented by a staff. Even in the United States, one of the old symbols of the powers of the office of the president is a staff. This is a very old idea. In Christianity, you often hear that the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. Meek is defined as quiet, gentle, and easily imposed on or submissive. But the original word translated from Greek as meek was praus. Praus was a word used to describe a feral horse that was trained for use in war. The horse still retained the superior strength and speed that feral horses had over horses domesticated from birth, but nonetheless was tamed to respond to commands. Meekness is only one component of praus. The other component is power. The ethic here is that people who are powerful but disciplined, they're not so weak that they get trampled over, but they're also not so uncontrolled that they're the ones doing the trampling. These are the people who are moral. We have thousands of years of history linking up the concepts of strength, dignity, discipline, and just rule. Simply being the strongest isn't enough, and we act out this idea through the use of ceremonial weapons, and scepters, and staffs of office. The first staffs of office were the ancient vexilloids. A vexilloid was a staff with a carved symbol on the head that the ancient Egyptians used to symbolize their authority. This practice was handed down to the Greeks and Romans, who all used symbols of their own various noble houses or gods as the head of their own vexilloids. They came to serve a practical purpose as well. When two armies were clashing on the field, people in the back holding up the vexilloids allowed for easy identification of which side was which. When the Persians took up the practice, they created square vexilloids made of bronze, upon which they displayed detailed scenes. This type of vexilloid became the inspiration for what would later become the coat of arms. It also served to inspire the earliest flags and war banners once Chinese silk began to make its way down the Silk Road to the Middle East and Europe. In this way, staffs of office, coats of arms, and flags all became symbols of legitimate authority. And the flags of some modern countries or territories incorporate their coat of arms into the design to underline what's being said. The modern idea of a tricolor flag, a flag with three colors, often arranged in horizontal or vertical stripes, came out of the French Revolution. The revolutionaries rejected the traditional French symbols of legitimacy, claiming that they represented a monarchy that had abused its power, and that the tricolor was a flag that could represent all French people, rather than being the symbol of one noble house. A lot of flags today have more simplistic designs, in order to put forward the idea that the flag includes all of the citizens of the nation. Notable exceptions to this rule are the US and the UK, while places like France or Italy or Germany or Ireland are nation-states, meaning that the state corresponds roughly with the historical lands and ethnic stock of the nationality they represent, the French, Italians, Germans, and Irish in this example. The US and the UK are not nation-states. They are unions of multiple nations bound into one state. In the UK, these are her constituent kingdoms, and the Union Jack is a combination of the flags of those kingdoms. In the US, there are 50 states, as the US was originally envisioned not as a country, but as a union of countries, which is why a lot of older world maps show states as independent entities, and why until the modern era, a lot of Americans didn't actually identify as American, but as citizens of their state. The American flag's stars represent the states as autonomous entities, and is one of the reasons that the EU flag also contains stars to represent its own states. While flags can represent nations, they can also represent ideologies. It's not hard to see how this came to be, considering that most revolutionaries historically have fought simultaneously for an ideology and a nation. Ideological flags generally aren't tricolor or fancy at all. Instead, they're often single color, in order to show that they aren't exactly inclusive. They represent a specific bloc. The liberal flag is just a blank yellow flag, owing to liberalism's historic connection with markets. The socialist flag is red, first used during the French Revolution to denote the blood of the revolutionaries. The conservative flag is blue, due to blue's historic relation with monarchy, since blue dye was so expensive only kings could afford it, and conservatives, being at home with tradition, are at home with the colors of monarchy. Green is used by environmental parties, for obvious reasons. The anarchist flag is pure black, to denote the lack of the state, or the rejection of the concept of legitimate authority. Pirates used black for the same reason. Fascists and Islamists also use black, to denote their rejection of the politics of the liberal world. Each of these ideologies also come with symbols, and sometimes the symbols are paired with the flags. For liberalism, it's usually a burning torch. For conservatism, it's usually a crown. For socialism, it's a rose. For communism, it's the hammer and sickle, and many other derivations of it, denoting the different types of communism. For fascism, it's the fasces, a bundle of sticks with an axe in the center. This is an old Roman symbol that began as a ceremonial weapon, and many fascist and non-fascist states alike use it to symbolize legitimate authority. It's this extensive history that prevents the fasces from being entirely viewed as a symbol of evil, like the swastika nowadays. The swastika itself is taken from various Asian religions, where it has a more positive connotation, but in the West, it's entirely correlated with the horrors of the Nazi regime. What's not known about so much in the West, however, is that the reason the swastika appeared within a white circle is because that white circle was originally a cog. The design was simplified over time, but the original pairing of the cog and the swastika was meant to represent a marriage between the material and the spiritual, the future and the past. This ties in with the concept of reactionary modernism, something that we've gone over on this channel already in a past video. For anarchy, their symbol is the A with a circle that you see everywhere nowadays. It's largely been co-opted by punks who don't really know much about politics, but they think it looks cool, especially when you spray paint it. The anarchy symbol is actually part of a triad, all enclosed by circles. The other two are the peace symbol for pacifists and the hourglass symbol for environmentalists, denoting that time for humanity is running out if we don't solve climate change. A symbol that Callum from the Lotus Eaters encountered at one point as a part of some amalgamation without recognizing it. What's important to note is that in functioning democracies, the flags and symbols of political parties or ideologies are ultimately subordinate to the flags and symbols of the nation. The symbols for the Democratic and Republican parties, a donkey and an elephant respectively, serve to represent two different political camps, but they're still stylized in a way that denotes their connection to the American flag. In Canada, the Liberal, Conservative, and NDP symbols feature maple leaves for the same reason. This is why, in the parliamentary system, the second party is called Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition. It's a recognition that your political opponents are not evil villains that you must enter into an eternal war with in order to strike down and defeat, but that everybody is playing on the same side, despite having disagreements. That's what a loyal opposition is. That's why they're loyal. But in totalitarian societies, the symbol of the party or the ideology always eventually replaces the symbol of the nation, in a declaration that the only legitimate authority is the authority of that ideology, and that to object to the ideology means to object to the existence of the civilization itself. Nearly every socialist, fascist, and Islamist group does this upon seizing power. The idea that there can be a loyal opposition, that despite our disagreements, we're playing for the same team, that's wiped out. What replaces it is an imperialist ideology with only one acceptable view. I think this is why your average person looks at the Regent Street Pride flags and feels kind of unsettled, like it's a conquering ideology. Because it is! When the UK hung Union Jacks, everyone was screaming about how it was Nazism to worship the flag like this. But how is it any different when it's this? Well, the difference is, this represents their ideology, and the Union Jack does not. There's no loyal opposition here. There's no, we're all on the same team. It's not like the Union Jack and the Pride flag are alternating or something, to denote that this is a British celebration of Pride. Canada's got its problems, that's for sure, but that's what we do here during Pride Month. The Canadian flag flies in tandem with the Pride flag out of gratitude that Canadian society is what allows Pride to be a thing in the first place, because you sure as hell aren't going to get it in some other parts of the world. But that view of Pride as a conquering ideology is slowly beginning to seep into Canada too, in a way that unironically feels Orwellian. Check this out.
Hello, bonjour, and welcome to the first ever Government of Canada Public Service Pride Awards. We stand next to the Pride flag today in memory of the LGBTQ2+ survivors who led the first marches, current community activists, and all of you who lead the way within our federal institutions. The flags illustrate how our social identities can overlap through intersectionality, sending a clear signal to Canadians from coast to coast to coast that diversity and inclusion are and must be valued components of our society and how we serve in the public sector.
Today, on the shores of the Ottawa River, the Rideau River, amongst the Gatineau Hills, and as we are close to the sacred area of the Chaudière, I come to you with a message. And that message from my ancestors is that all things have masculine and feminine energy, and it is beautiful in all expressions. There is a place and space for all, and nothing in nature is one or the other, it is the all.
Miigwechti, that was very important and powerful.
In the UK, we know it's a conquering ideology because of the treatment of some people in relation to it. Like, for example, the removal of lesbians from a pride parade because they don't want to have sex with trans women.
Need to use force.
We're marching in a march.
At the moment.
No, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, you know now. Let me just explain to you, and it'll give you some understanding.
Yeah.
So at the moment, your march, this group of people, is causing confrontation between different groups of people.
We're lesbians.
Okay?
We're lesbians. It's gay pride.
Whatever you are at the moment
I'm lesbian.
is causing confrontation.
I did not want to I went home and I fucking you're bullshit. Fuck off.
Safely march yourselves.
We don't want to do that. We want to be
But that's your choice. So what I'm telling you is to make sure it's safe. We are going to remove you from the road, and I want you to do that of your own accord.
I want to make sure I understand that you are removing lesbians from like LGBT march.
Yes, that is what's happening.
Okay, why?
For safety. For your safety, for other people's safety.
Or the arrest of a person who retweeted the LGBT swastika, the joke symbol I used as the thumbnail for this video.
No. The Swedish Hampshire police would realise how ridiculous this is. It is. Good. I'm glad
to come to this.
What
Did it need to come to?
Tell us why you escalated it to this level. Because I don't understand. I posted something that he posted. You come to arrest me. You don't arrest him. Why has it come to this? Why am I in cuffs? Because of something he shared, then I shared.
Because someone has been caused, obviously, anxiety based upon your social media post. That's
not his.
Why you've been arrested.
The guy who's recording this video, who originally posted it, is Lawrence Fox, a British actor. He's not getting arrested, somebody else is, for the crime of retweeting what he posted. In the UK, there was a huge backlash towards Fox for the meme, but no legal trouble. The only people who got visits from the cops were people who shared his joke, presumably because they were a lot less likely to be able to legally defend themselves than Fox. It's not entirely the cops' fault. They know that they're going around looking like idiots, but they have to enforce the law as it's written, and the UK's laws on hate speech are extremely regressive. This is an ideology that is being enforced by the powers that be, using the authority of the state to do so, which is frightening, considering that you'd expect the enforcement arm of the state to be politically neutral in a democracy. It's one thing to say, not discriminate in your hiring practices for police based on sexuality or whatever. That's reasonable. But when the vision of the future is a trans police boot stamping on a human face forever, that's a pretty big problem. But as a little side note, this does explain the Nexus Mods shit show from a few weeks ago, considering that site is based out of the UK as well. In general, there's always people who get their panties twisted over somebody who accidentally leaves tire marks over a pride crosswalk, or people who lose their shit over dumb kids stealing their school's pride flag and burning it to be edgy. But the legal issue here, ultimately, is the destruction of property. These are instances of people destroying stuff that isn't theirs. And thankfully, the act of burning or desecrating a flag itself, at least in the English-speaking world, is not yet considered a crime. If you bought your own pride flag and burned it, that should be allowed. And yet I have a feeling that some progs would demand hate speech or hate crime charges, and some overly indoctrinated low-level civil servant might try to do something about it for the Reddit updoots. I considered buying my own pride flag and burning it for this video, just for the shits and giggles, but fuck it, it's not worth the $8. Plus, despite all the cries of white supremacy, it's generally not people like me who are purposely defacing these symbols, it turns out. If you think I'm being a bit extreme, that it's not actually a conquering ideology, it's just a celebration, I'm just being a bigot, all you have to do is imagine a screeching prog reacting to a burning pride flag. You know that's not just something that I'm conjuring up in my mind. You know that's something they would actually do. They are not simply flying the symbols, they are enforcing the ideology behind them. Back in Callum's Twitter thread, he describes how all the local shops had pride flags or pride symbols in their storefronts. It reminds me of how, in other totalitarian systems, displays of loyalty to the ideology were also required on all private property, lest the authorities come knocking. And during the Summer of Love 2020, multiple owners of businesses put up signs of submission and fealty towards Black Lives Matter, hoping that they would not get looted. It's all the same in the end. Bend the knee or suffer the price. And just to really hammer the point home, I want you to think back over the past 6 or 7 years. How did the Progs treat what they perceived to be the symbols of their opponents, even if those symbols were honestly pretty benign? Pepe the Frog, the OK hand sign as a Nazi symbol, drinking milk as a sign of white supremacy? Yeah, those were all 4chan troll ops that leftoids fell for, and it was fucking hilarious to watch. But the underlying ethic is that they attacked what they thought were symbols of their opponents as a way of defacing and rejecting the ideology of their opponents, which is why they take such offense when you don't give their symbols the reverence they feel is due now. And even when you make an attempt, it's never enough. It's a shame that the rainbow flag equals no race mixing op never took off. Maybe we'd be spared all this nonsense. We have a deep-seated cultural view of a flag as representation of the legitimacy of a community or an ideology. To fly that flag is to press the legitimacy. To destroy the flag is to reject it. Neutral spaces will fly multiple different flags as a way to welcome everyone in, to represent the idea that this is a place where we can come together with our differences and hammer out agreements on how to live together without wrecking everything we've built. To line the streets exclusively with a flag of an ideology that the majority of the people on the ground don't follow, that is imperialism. It's not imperialism by a state, but that doesn't make it any less repressive.